AI is everywhere. You can't escape it in today's world. But if you know how to use it to your advantage, you can leverage AI to work smarter. And that's exactly what we're going to be covering in this video. By the end of this, you will see us turn a long document, a scope of work, into actionable outputs, all generated by AI. We're going to do this with Airtable agents that can extract the information in that document and pull out the relevant components so that we can do our work more efficiently. So if you're ready to start learning about leveraging the power of AI inside of your Airtable builds, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth and this is Gap Consulting. It's our mission here to help you unlock the full potential of Airtable and related no-code tools. And of course, in order to be a successful Airtable developer, you're gonna need to leverage AI, which is exactly what we're talking about in this video. Now, we're gonna be breaking this down for Airtable agents, analyzing a document that we upload in Airtable. But before we get into the heart of the video, I first want to invite you to join us for a strategy session. If you're in the midst of a new Airtable build, or if you're just getting started and you're feeling a bit stuck, schedule some time with our team and we will walk through on a free call what it is you're trying to accomplish and help you unpack the next steps to get you moving forward. If you're ready to book that call, you can sign up for free at gapconsulting.io/strategy-call. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the heart of the video. And we're going to kick off with agents. Now, here's the thing. Most organizations don't have a lack of data. They have a lack of usable information. In most cases, data is hiding in plain sight in the form of PDFs, Word documents, Google Docs. It's all over the place except for in a usable database where you can actually take action and start moving things forward. So we're going to be building agents around this very concept. We're going to assume, for our example, that we are working from a templatized document. And in our case, it's going to be a scope of work. We're going to take that document that lives, for our example, in Google Drive, and we're going to build agents that read that document, analyze it, and spit back meaningful information to our system so that we can execute on what is covered in the document. So while we're going through this example, imagine all of the different documents, PDFs, Word docs, Google Drive, Google folders, all of the stuff that you have strewn about for your workflows. Imagine having that in one place where you could actually analyze it and get meaningful outputs. That is the problem that we're going to solve. Now let's start by jumping into our very simple data structure. What we have here is a simple table that is naming what the document is. In this case, I've called it sample SOW for scope of work. I have the Google Doc or the Google Drive folder URL. So for us, it's a Google Doc, and I've just put the URL here. And then I have a simple button. This button is just pointing to the URL so that we can easily open up the document. So anybody could have access to this and just with one tap, open up the document from inside of Airtable. Now we are working here with a sample scope of work, as I already identified in the naming of the document earlier. But you can see here that this follows our standard template for our scope of work that we do for custom projects. It's calling out when it was prepared, what the implementation is going to look like. It's talking about timeline, how much the client has already paid, how much they still have remaining. It includes the overview, objectives. So this is our standard scope of work. And this very sample version is something that we share regularly with prospective clients when people are considering moving forward on a project and they want to know what it will look like when we produce the scope of work. So this is a great example for us to use for the purpose of this video. Not only does it follow the same format that the standard scope of work would follow, but it also has meaningful information that we can call out. We can ask our agents to analyze, and we should be able to pull out information. Stuff like, what's the total budget? Or what's the remaining budget? Or what's the timeline on this particular project? Or what's the name of the project? All of these different components are things that we can ask AI agents to analyze, so that rather than having to open up the document every time someone on our team is wondering, oh gosh, what was it on the Sonder creative scope of work? How long was that supposed to be? Was that 6 weeks or 7? We don't have to go hunt for the information. AI can just analyze the scope of work that lives wherever it lives, and we can have the data at our fingertips in Airtable. So that's what we're solving for. So key takeaway here is that I'm not trying to build the perfect system right now from scratch. Instead, I'm trying to extract the information that already exists, and I'm trying to identify the patterns that will exist in the multiple types of documents that we upload. So for this process, we're not going to imagine this process for one scope of work and then something else for, let's say, a work agreement, a completely different document. This system is going to be built specifically for scopes of work. We have an input of an unstructured document, and then we're going to get outputs in Airtable from that document. The same document type every time, the same structured outputs every time, but different documents for each record. So what exactly is an AI agent in terms of Airtable? Well, it's a specific field in Airtable that has instructions and a prompt given to it to interpret certain components of a record and then give a very specific output based on the prompt. You can think of it as a cross between a formula and an automation, except for the fact that an AI agent is capable of human-like thinking. So it would be like typing your prompt into ChatGPT or Claude and asking it to analyze it. But of course, that's a semi-manual process if you had to do that for every scope of work. So instead of uploading a document to the AI tool of your choice, we're going to have that AI tool directly in Airtable analyze the document that has Airtable access, whether that's from a Google Doc link or the actual attachment itself or some other connection like Jira Cloud. To help this make sense, let's start with our first agent, and we're going to use long text here. So the first thing we'll do is add a new field. A field in Airtable is a column. And in the old days of Airtable, before we had AI, our columns or fields were fairly simple. We just chose the type of data that lived there. So it could be an email or a URL or text or a checkbox, but every field or column had its own type of data. Well, in this way, we're still going to have a type of data for our agent, except that we're going to note to Airtable that this is an AI-powered field. In order to build this, we will select the Create Custom Agent. And when we get here, we've got a few different things to look through. The first place you might draw your attention is to the instructions. So what we need to do here is give Airtable the prompt and tell it exactly what we want it to do. How do we want it to analyze the information here? So I've already created a prompt that I will paste in here, and we'll read through this together really quickly. So we're saying, look, you're analyzing a scope of work for a consulting project, and you're going to use the Google Drive document linked at, and then here we have an at reference. So I haven't actually brought in the field when I pasted this in. So let's go ahead and remove this part. I'm just going to delete it out. And I will come back in here and manually add this field in. This lives at the Google Doc URL that's provided here. Again, this is where I brought in my Google Doc information. This is the URL of the file that we looked at earlier. Now I'm saying, hey, please review the document and produce a structured analysis with the following sections. So we're calling out the different sections that we want it to highlight for us. Now we're doing this as a first example. In reality, I will normally want to break this out into separate AI agents so that I can add them into different parts of a workflow. But for now, for our first step, we're going to bring it in just a wall of text. So let's go ahead and get this all set up, and we will close this. Now, before I move out, you might notice that we got a failed preview here. We're going to fix that in just a moment. So let's go ahead and close this down for now. Now we're back in the settings for this. We need to give this agent a name. So I'll ask it for analysis of SOW. And the reason that we got that failure is because we haven't yet added our tools. So here, our second option in the AI agent If we toggle this, you'll notice that we can bring in different powers for our Airtable AI agents. So here, because I'm sharing this access through Google Drive, I have to authorize that permission. So when I select Google Drive, you can see that we've now authorized our Google Drive account, and this will now allow us to get an output from this agent. Now, there are a couple of other things that we should draw our attention to before moving on. The next one I want to highlight is the type. So we've already called out that this is going to be long text. In subsequent steps, we will break out different types of data, but for now, we're going to just give a summary analysis. Long text is perfectly fine. So if you want to make a change here, note that you have a bunch of different data types to choose from, and again, we'll break this down with a deeper dive in just a moment. Now, the other one that many people kind of glaze over, but is really, really important, if you want consistent quality outputs, make sure that you choose the model that makes the most sense. So when you look at models here, you're going to notice at the top is ChatGPT. So the most popular still tool up at the top, and you'll see the default is the 4.1 model. Airtable does a good job of calling out which of these models are going to be fast and lower cost for you. So if you wanted to go with GPT-5 Mini, it's not terribly expensive, but it's also not a more robust and thoughtful model. So depending on the type of work that you're doing, be sure to choose a model that aligns with the output that you're looking for. If your goal is a simple summary or a rewrite of a paragraph, a cheaper and faster model is probably sufficient. But in our case, we were doing some business analysis. There is some complex thinking that needs to go into this, so I definitely want to choose a more robust model. So for example, I might go with 4.6 Opus from Claude or 4.6 Sonnet. I'll choose Sonnet here, and let's go ahead and create this field. Now there are some more settings we'll come back and dive into in a moment, but right now we have enough to get this thing cooking. Now that we've saved the agent, you'll notice that it's asking us if we want to run it. And this has to do with one of those additional settings that we'll get into in a moment. But for now, let's manually run that agent. And we're going to just push the button, and you'll see that it's telling us, hey, I am searching Google Drive. And that's because we gave it authorization to do so. Again, the document lives here. So it's searching a specific document for this particular analysis. And that's an important thing to highlight because we can add numerous different scopes of work as different records here, and we can perform this same analysis on each one. Now we paused for a few seconds while the agent did its thinking in the background, but it didn't take too long and we got an output. So let's go ahead and expand this and see what we got. So you'll notice that it followed the exact framework that we put together in the prompt. Here's the summary. We're going to build a unified Airtable-first operations hub for Sonder Creative, a 14-person boutique brand strategy and digital marketing agency. Again, this is a sample. This company does not exist. It's just an example, but it did a great job of extracting the information from the sample SOW. We've got the client goal. We see the key deliverables for the output. We see what was specifically named out of scope, which is very important, especially when you have something like a living, breathing project like this, where things could kind of change or evolve as the project continues. Having an out of scope section is critical. We have our assumptions and dependencies. We have our timeline. We have our investment, which breaks down how much is already paid, how much is still due. It's exactly what we asked for in the exact way that we asked for it. So this is an example of how well Airtable agents can follow instructions and give us the information that we're seeking. And I do again want to highlight that we have not saved an attachment directly here in Airtable. This all ran through the Google Drive or the Google Doc link that we have from this document. This works the same as if you had a document in OneDrive or Jira. So we have all of those components, all of those options available at our fingertips. But now we're ready to take this a step further. Let's now break out a different type of data that we might want to extract through analysis of the scope of work. So I'm going to shut down our long text here. Worked great, but let's build another agent. I'm going to create a new custom agent and drop in some new instructions. I'm going to open these up so we can see exactly what we're doing. And of course, I will update our scope of work link with the Google Doc. So we're saying, hey, review the scope of work and classify the project risk level. Only return one of the following values, low, medium, or high, using the following criteria where we identify what these different things mean. So you'll notice that although we are currently building long text output because we have not updated the settings yet, you'll notice that we're asking Airtable to output the data in a very different way. Just give us one of these three things, low, medium, high, in terms of risk level, based on these criteria. Do not explain your answer, return only the risk level. That's it. So let's close our prompt, and now we will label this risk level. And of course, we need to make some updates. So we already looked at long text, but here's where it matters if we choose a different type of data. So I'm going to go with single select here. And because we have three different types of data that we want, I'm going to actually add those options here. So let's add three different options, and we have low, medium, or high. And this way, we're able to add some guardrails to the way the agent is able to work inside of the system. We can even come in at this level and add the description for AI. So if we wanted to, here we've identified what it means to have a low risk level. The scope is clear, deliverables are specific, etc. We can bring that in and add that description right here to help the AI. Same thing for medium here. And I'll bring it in here. And let's grab the one from high. I'm going to copy this one out. And you might feel this is a bit redundant. I certainly do as well. But at the same time, I don't feel like we can give an AI agent too much information. I mean, feel free to test it on your own, of course. But for me, I would keep it this way. And we'll also identify some colors here so that we can flag things that might be higher risk. Now, this is a sample scope of work, so to be honest, it's not even a real project. So I'm hopeful, though, even so, that we get a return from this on of a low risk level. Now, one thing you might notice here, unfortunately, is when we change the type of data here to single select, we lose the ability to switch on the tools and bring in the Google Doc. So now, unfortunately, this is a bit of a broken setup. So how can we work around this? Well, we can bring the actual text from this document into a PDF, bring this into Airtable to analyze it, or we can bring our type of data back to a different type, like long text. And when we make this selection, we get access to Google Drive again. Now, this is not an ideal output because we don't want just text floating around, low, medium, or high. So because this is currently in development and new features are being released constantly, I would expect that these things are updated very soon within Airtable's environment. But as of recording, May 2026, this is a limitation to the Airtable agents. So how can we work around it for our example? Well, let's actually bring in that PDF. I'm just going to create this field for now, and I'm not going to actually trigger it. Well, it looks like I did. But let's go ahead and add an attachment here, and we'll bring in the attachment field, and this will be my scope of work 2, which is just another file. Now, bear in mind that the first agent we ran was doing it from the Google Doc, but in our example now, I'm going to bring in a scope of work and actually bring it into this attachment field. I'm just going to bring it from off camera here and drop it in and upload it here. So this is the Sonder Creative sample file. It's the exact same thing, except not in Google Doc. And now we can turn this over, and instead of analyze the Google Doc link, we will instead at the new field at SOW2. When we do this, can we change it to a single select? Yes, we can. So a quick recap here is if we are referencing an external tool like Google Doc, we don't get access to some of the types of data like single select. Why that is, I can't say, but for our purposes here today, we solved it by bringing in the attachment field instead and actually bringing in the attachment into Airtable. Now, like I said, I'm sure in the future, this will change, this will update, because this is constantly being improved and enhanced. We are at the forefront of the new features and new tools being released in Airtable every day. Now, before we save this field and wrap this video, let's talk about 2 more key or important features that you need to know about every AI agent that you build in Airtable. And they are here underneath the prompt. So you'll see that we have automatic generation and additional triggers. So what are these things? Number one, automatic generation will trigger whenever we have the required fields. So for our prompt, we have the field requirement of SOW2. That is the new field, the attachment field that we just added moments ago. If we do not have a document in that field, this agent cannot run. It will not run. And that makes sense, because how would it perform its analysis if it didn't have anything to reference? So this is really helpful. If you are asking an agent to analyze a few things at the same time, maybe you reference 2, 3, 4 fields in the same prompt, you can make sure that it automatically generates when all of those things exist. But what if you don't want those different fields to be required? What if you want to make them optional? So you could say, automatically run, but I don't want you to necessarily require 1, 2, or 3 fields. This is possible if you go in to the reference inside of your prompt. In the instructions, click here, and you'll see that you have the option to make it optional. This way, you're giving the Airtable agent permission to run automatically with or without this particular variable. So use this mindfully. Make sure that you're only doing it when you actually don't require that information. I would never do that for this particular prompt, because what in the world am I asking it to analyze if I make this optional? So that's how the automatic generation works, but let's look at the additional triggers as well. We have 2 options here, scheduled and when conditions are met. So for example, we could say run every Monday morning at 9 a.m. And notice that we can make this selection and then come in and edit it. So we could change that to Tuesday at 8 a.m. and remove Monday entirely. So a lot of flexibility here. But in addition to the frequency of the schedule, we can also add conditions. So we can say, perform this analysis on whatever this schedule is, but do it based on conditions. So for example, we could say, only do it if the name of the project is sample. Or we might have other fields like the status of a project, for example, and we could say only perform this analysis if the project is active. And if the project is complete, we no longer need to waste AI credits analyzing an output from AI. So in this way, we are able to add a lot of detail to our schedule, not only the frequency, but also conditions under which we want to apply the agent. So this gives you a lot of control over the agent in entirety. Now, the last component I want to do here, of course, is save this. And I'm going to rerun the agent. So now that we've saved it up and run the agent one more time in the background, there's one more thing I want to bring your attention to. And it is when we click on the link here for an agent output, that we can see the sources that it used when it ran its analysis. So we can click on view sources and we can see in this case, it's telling us, hey, I looked at this PDF that you told me to look at that lives right here in the attachment field. And that is what I used to make my determination. And also, it shows us that it was edited by the field agent. So we can see that this value came to exist because of the field agent doing what it was supposed to do. But here's what I love the most about Airtable agents. And this is something that I think doesn't get enough publicity. I can edit the output of this agent. I might choose to read this scope of work myself and say, hey, you know what? Actually, I think this might be a high-risk situation. I need to flag this even though AI doesn't agree. So to do that, all I have to do is click in like I would any other single select field, and I can just choose the risk level that I think makes sense. And you'll notice that when I do that, it tells me this was edited by you, bud. You're taking ownership now. This is not an AI agent that gave you this output. And you can see that the inputs have been changed. And if we want the agent to do its analysis again, we have to run the output again. So that's it for AI agents. Now you know pretty much everything there is to know about building AI agents in Airtable to extract the meaningful information from your documents so that you can run more efficient workflows. I hope you got a ton of value from this video, and if you did, we'd love a thumbs up. subscribe to the channel so you see more content like this. And of course, if you need more help on your next Airtable build, swing by our website. We have a ton of resources for you, including the strategy session that I called out earlier in the video. That's it for this one, friends. No matter what, keep on building.